Just like the Year 1 Deluxe Edition hardcover, the Year 2 Deluxe Edition hardcover is a thing of beauty. When you manage to get your hands on one of these little gems that seem to be rarer than gold, you can't help but look at it. You know there's a year's worth of stories in there, but that can wait. You just want to look at the cover, and the back cover, and the spine, because it's all so beautiful. Where the Year 1 hardcover had green as its theme, from the cover with the Green Ranger on it, to the spine with the Green Dragon power coin on it, to the green interior dividing pages, Year 2 has red as its theme. The Red Ranger on the cover, the red back cover, the red spine with the Tyrannosaurus power coin in the middle, the red interior pages. Everything is identical to Year 1 except for the fact that it's red themed rather than green. Something else I said in my review of Year 1 is that I was around for the original run of Mighty Morphin, so I know my shit. I know even more now, because since reading Year 1 I've been going through the shows, and I've gone through all of Zeo, the Turbo movie, and most of the Turbo series. Hopefully by the time the Shattered Grid hardcover comes out I'll have gone through so many more. Before I start talking about the book and the blind box, I want to talk about who you trust to buy it from, because if you're anything like me, you're looking forward to getting the Shattered Grid hardcover and want to make sure it arrives. I was so lucky to get my copy of Year 2, and I'm warning you all now, do not, under any circumstances, pre-order the Shattered Grid hardcover from Amazon and trust that it will arrive. They will take pre-orders up the wazoo with absolutely no regard for how many units they'll actually get in stock. What this means is you won't end up getting your book, and this is exactly what happened to me. In spite of the fact that I pre-ordered and I chose release date delivery, they didn't get it to me in time. Not only that, but their tracking system kept telling me it was going to arrive, and after speaking to multiple chat assistants over a period of a week, taking up literally hours of my time, they eventually admitted they'd run out of stock. Then they tried to get me to keep the order because I would get the book in 1 to 3 months. Let me tell you, my friends, when Amazon says 1 to 3 months, it means you're never going to get it from them. So I did the only thing anyone could reasonably do in that situation. I raged, I panicked, and then went to eBay. The prices on eBay? They're astronomical. I have a friend on YouTube called Smurd P. He does some very cool reviews of Power Rangers comics. He has a very in-depth review of the SH Figure Arts White Ranger. He does X-Men comics, X-Men toys, Beast Wars toys, but he shines with his reviews of the Marvel omnibuses. You should definitely check him out. I'll leave a pinned link to his channel in the comments. He says he can't afford an omnibus a week, but that's lies. It's all lies. You can just see he uploads one a week. Something we like to do is watch the prices of the Power Rangers hardcovers on eBay, because people, they've just lost all sense of value of money. We watched a few copies of Year 1 being sold at auction on eBay, and the first one went for £200, which is 4 times its normal sale value when new. The second one we watched, £430. No joke, and I will take a picture and I'll upload it somewhere and leave a link so you can see. These people are mental. They're either mental or rich, but my money's on mental. Those prices are insane. Nearly £500 for a book that costs £50. It's just insane. It's mental. Who are these people? So I wasn't looking forward to paying prices like those to get a copy of Year 2, and I looked absolutely everywhere and everyone was out of stock. At that point I discovered the Year 2 blind box, a surprise box that contained the Year 2 hardcover inside. It was £90 brand new, and that is the retail price. And I figured rather than waiting to buy a copy of Year 2 at £500, it was better to pay £90 up front. Fair enough, it's twice what I was expecting to pay, but at least I would have my copy of Year 2, and I could always sell all the extras that came inside the box anyway. So I ordered it from eBay. The day it arrived, I found a brand new copy of the Year 2 hardcover on eBay for £45, which is £10 cheaper than the RRP. I hit the buy it now button like nobody's business and was absolutely thrilled when it arrived. So the lesson of the story is this: only pre-order from places that take your money there and then. When they do that, they're obligated to send you a copy because you've already paid them. Amazon can't be trusted with things like limited printings because they don't take your money there and then, and they didn't even have the decency to let me know that my book wasn't coming. Add on an extra week to the time I'd already been waiting and bam, prices had already doubled. All because Amazon messed up. I was lucky to get my copy, but I got a copy in the end for less than the RRP, so I'm happy. Lucky, very lucky, but happy. Amazon have actually done the same thing to me with the Star Wars Queen's Shadow hardcover. The release date's been and gone, book hasn't arrived, they haven't shipped it, nobody's let me know what's going on, they don't know what's going on when I talk to them. Amazon is useless. Anyway, back to the Year 2 hardcover. Where Year 1 opened with a foreword from Jason David Frank, Year 2 gets a foreword from none other than Austin St. John, the original Red Ranger and the Gold Zeo Ranger. He talks about how he went for the first audition, then when he'd barely left he'd already received a callback. He started filming and before any of the cast knew it, they'd taken over the hearts and minds of children all over the world, and I was one of them. There's a video on his channel where he goes into great detail about his auditions for the role of Jason, and I thoroughly recommend you watch it because it's very entertaining. I thought his foreword was very interesting because I know Austin St. John had a lot of issues with Haim Saban, the biggest of all being the way he treated the cast of the show. Overworked, underpaid and stone cold for days on end. It sounded like a horrible experience, and being stuck in a place like that for 3/4 of the day, 7 days a week, not only sounds miserable, but it's no surprise that the cast had no idea how popular their characters were. Despite that, he still gave it his all and brought Jason to life, and as a kid who watched the show, I never picked up on any of those issues shining through. It was also nice of him to go back on the show and become the Gold Ranger, because it gave fans a chance to see their favourite original first leader of the team have another day in the sun. So he's had issues with Haim throughout the years, and he wasn't the only one. Walter Jones, who played Zack, and the late Thuy Trang, who played Trini, also had issues, and the three of them walked out on set, and that's the reason we ended up getting Rocky, Adam and Aisha. There's an excellent video on YouTube where Austin talks about this stuff to people at some kind of convention, and he's really in depth about it, and if I can find it I'll leave a link for both videos in the description so you can hear it in his own words. But all of this shows that as much as he had issues with Haim, as much as he doesn't want to help him make money, even today, he still cares about the fans. Sure, he was probably paid to write the foreword, but when I read it, I didn't see it that way. He talks about how he had to take words on a page and create the leader of the Power Rangers out of them, and in my opinion, talking about something like that, especially after it left such a bad taste in someone's mouth, they didn't do it for the money, it's about the fans. The actual story of Year 2 is split in two, but rather than being independent stories, they're more layered, and while one is resolved halfway through, it does actually tie into the second one. The story starts exactly where Year 1 left off, with Tommy and Billy trapped in the world of the Coinless and the Rangers still tied to Tommy's Green Ranger powers, and Rita in control of the command centre in the main universe. The first story all kind of ties in together and folds in on itself because there's a bit of interdimensional travel, plus the fact that the world of the Coinless is a future alternate version of the main universe. The Rangers of the main universe don't have much of a story, they basically have to fight off a group of enhanced giant Goldars and get to the command centre. Once there, they start to play around with the remains of the Black Dragon in a successful effort to get their powers back. It's good for what it is, and it runs parallel to the story of the world of the Coinless and Lord Draken, which is the real appeal of the first story. In the world of the Coinless, there's some question from that world's Rangers as to the validity of the main universe's Rangers' claims of being actual Rangers, and Trini is convinced that they're Draken's spies and shouldn't be trusted. But Zack gives them a chance and takes them to their hideout, which is pretty cool. It's a giant cave filled with refugees, and there's a giant Mastodon power coin on some scaffolding. It's dark, it's dusty, but it's all the Coinless Rangers can do to help the people of their dimension. dimension. It's revealed that the Billy of their world died fighting Draken in the final battle, and they still have his coin and Morpher, which they've kept secret from Draken, preventing him from abusing its power and creating Triceratops sentries as he did with the rest of the power coins. I liked the way they defeated Draken. It seems that by using Dead Billy's power coin to mess with the teleport function, it created an energy burst that broke both Draken's and his Ranger Sentry's power coins. It was more complicated than an energy burst though. It was a very focused version of what Draken and the Black Dragon used to remove the Ranger's powers in Year 1, this time focusing on Draken's power coin and its access to the Morphin grid. Rather than face defeat, Draken chose to jump off a cliff where, unbeknownst to the Rangers, when they teleport back to the main universe, he's accidentally pulled along with them, and all we see is him being lit up by spotlights from a helicopter and a few other vehicles with no explanation of who they are, and that's the end of the first arc in Year 2. It was really enjoyable and didn't waste any time catching up the reader with the events of the first volume. Instead, Higgins has rightly assumed we've all read it and just carries on as if we know what's happened. It wouldn't hurt to have just one page with a catch up on it, but to be honest, I think anyone reading this would find it completely unnecessary, so I think not having one was the right call. There's an issue where we see Zordon floating through dimensions, seeing the past and the future, all possible roads in all possible dimensions, and he sees the path for the world of the coinless, then meets the Zordon from that world, who then dies. It was very cool to see because when he eventually makes it back a few issues later, you know Zordon has at least the chance of avoiding the mistakes that led to the rise of Draken in the world of the coinless, and while he was floating around he managed to see Saba's astral projection form floating around and spoke through him to Zack in the final battle against Draken and told him to wait because he will return with the one who can save their world, which we saw at the end of Year 1 when Tommy meets Saba. So it plays in perfectly with the end of Year 1 as well as directly tying into the main story of Year 2 because as we see in this book, Zack waited for someone to appear. This pretty much marks the end of the comics being illustrated by Hendry Prosetja and Matt Herms. It's a shame because their art was as good as in the first volume. In fact, it was identical, right on the edge of being too cartoony without stepping over the line. Nice bright colours, plenty of darks to show the shadows, and the Zords look great, and there were good page layouts throughout the arc. I will miss these two and I hope they come back someday. Just like in Year 1, when an issue is set in a different time, they change the artist so you know it's set in a different time or a memory, similar to how in TV shows they play a harp and have a blurry screen when someone's dreaming. The art for the Zordon issue was done by Daniel Bayliss, who's done quite a few little stories that made it into Lost Chronicles, and From Here to Despair, which was the exclusive story that was in Year 1. The art was good, and you can tell it's Bayliss because of how similar the colour palette is to From Here to Despair, and the art for Saba was fantastic, especially when he was glowing. The second arc in the book is the Grace Sterling arc, and holy shit did Higgins go in a different direction from what I thought he was going to. In an age where spoilers are unavoidable, and yes I do mean unavoidable, I had no choice but to see Grace Sterling and hear about how she was Zordon's Red Ranger from the 60s well before Year 2 was released. That's okay though, I didn't hear any more about her, so really it was just enough to whet my appetite for the arc rather than spoiling anything for me. But my god, the whole thing was a disaster. Not the writing was good, I mean the events of the actual story. The Rangers get absolutely massacred. Literally massacred. In 1969, during the moon landing, Grace and 4 other people were teleported to the command centre where Zordon turns them all into Rangers. Their mission? Teleport to the moon and prevent Psycho Green from releasing Rita Repulsa from her imprisonment in her space dumpster. Brand new Rangers versus a Psycho Ranger. Grace and 1 other member were the only ones who got away. Psycho Green killed everyone else. I appreciate the fact that Higgins didn't make them the heroes, instead dying because of their own arrogance. Zordon made Grace the leader, but the others didn't accept liked it, especially the Pink Ranger, which hilariously was a really buff dude, and their arguing ultimately led to Psycho Green killing them all. I don't know anything about the Psycho Rangers. I stopped watching when Mighty Morphin ended, but I don't feel like I needed to know anything more than a quick Google search told me. They're evil versions of the Galaxy Rangers, and they can transform into a second, more monstrous, more powerful form. That's all I need to know, and you see it in the comic. It was enjoyable to read, and while the story was only one issue long, that's all it needed to be, because Grace's main story is set in the present with the Rangers after they defeated Draken in the world of the Coinless. I have no idea where the moon landing was taking place in this issue. The comic makes it very clear that it takes place at the exact same time, but it's nowhere to be seen, which is odd because they're on the light side of the moon. In fact, they actually run into Rita's palace at one point, so I think the moon landing should have been there somewhere, even if it was just in the background, and I think someone missed a trick with that. Pencils for this issue were done by Daniele Di Nicuolo with colours by Walter Baiamonte. The colours were fine, although I did think they were a lot more two-dimensional than Matt Herm's colours in the main story, but I wasn't a fan of Di Nicuolo's pencils. He's good at angles, drawing transformed Psycho Green as very menacing, and facial expressions are easy to read, but the art just felt lacking when compared to the team of Prasetya and Herms in the main comic. It wasn't bad, but in my opinion it was definitely a step down. That doesn't exactly fill me with confidence for Shattered Grid, because I know Di Nicuolo does at least a few of the issues there, and I know he did the Pink comic as well. Most of the second arc actually follows Grace in the present as she's searching for two lost pilots who disappeared over an island that shouldn't exist. She turns to the Rangers for help, and as it turns out, everyone on the island is made of clay and turns into monsters when they see the Rangers. It's Finster's island, and after the events of the previous arc, he's been taking some time off. The Rangers capture him and contain him in a pocket dimension, but the threat had only just started because Finster had hidden sleeper agents around the world, monsters that thought they were human but at an unknown time would transform and wreak havoc. To be honest, apart from using them all at once, which happens later in the story, it doesn't seem any more dangerous than when Rita sends a monster down to Earth normally, so it feels like Higgins tried to make it seem like more of a threat than it actually was. The Rangers deal with the threat, Finster escapes, and when Billy is looking around Promethea, he finds none other than Lord Draken, weakened and in captivity, and judging by the fact that his pupils are now red, it seems like Promethea had been experimenting on him. So when Draken was accidentally teleported back to the main universe and picked up by the helicopter at the end of the first arc, it was Grace and Promethea that picked him up. The end was really cool, seeing Saba attempt to assassinate Draken, fail, and watch Draken break his head off, then open a portal and escape. I haven't read Shattered Grid, I'm waiting for the hardcover to come out, but with Rita's behind the scenes plotting and Draken altered and on the loose, it seems to set it up perfectly. The story was okay. I preferred the main Draken story to be honest, but what was in the second arc was good and does loosely tie into that. I particularly enjoyed when Rita shouted at Finster, then he said he just did exactly what she told him to do in a really snarky way, and the look on Rita's face was just priceless. So it was a good arc, but not as strong as the last two, but that's okay because not every arc can be a massively grand arc. You need the smaller, lighter arcs to give the bigger ones some weight. The art for this arc, apart from the issue set in 1969, was drawn by Jonas Scharf and coloured by Joanna Lafuente, and I really didn't like it. I mean, Lafuente's colours were fine, but still not as good as Herm's, but Scharf's art is pretty bad, it's really dire. Some of it was good, I'm not trying to say it was all bad, but when you're used to reading the comics and the costumes and helmets look just like they did in the show, then they switched to the movie style helmets, it's really jarring. I've never been a fan of the movie costumes. In my opinion, they just look stupid and unnecessarily bulky, but that's exactly how Scharf has drawn them here, or the helmets at least. It's a shame because the art was so good up until this point. It's made worse by the fact that there seems to be this weird disconnect between the Rangers' heads and their bodies, so everything looks very static. To his credit, he's good at drawing the monsters, and I particularly enjoyed the cat monster with the regrowing heads, and Promethea in the Sunsets looks pretty cool, even if it's a direct rip-off of the Triskelion from Earth 1610, but as nice as all those things are, they're just not as good as Prosetcha and Hermes, so I hope they don't stay for too long. Once all 12 issues are over, there's quite a few extra stories, an afterword by Bryce Coulson, and then the cover gallery. Psychotic is a comic exclusive to the Year 2 hardcover and shows the creation of Psycho Green. I thought it was interesting to see how he betrayed his team, and I thought it was a stroke of genius for writer Trey Moore to use a Super Sentai team that hasn't been reused in Power Rangers yet, the Fiveman, one of the older Super Sentai teams. Unless you already know about Super Sentai crossovers, I warn you, don't look them up on Ranger Wiki unless you have a few hours to kill, because while in this day and age it's common knowledge that half of the scenes from Power Rangers were taken from Super Sentai, it's not common knowledge about how many crossovers there were in that series, and I'm telling you there were loads, and if you look it up you will be drawn into this black hole where time doesn't exist, and you just go from page to page to page and back to where you started. It's fun, but it's like going down the rabbit hole, trust me, I speak from experience. Psychotic was illustrated by French Carlo Magno, and I preferred his art to the art in the second half of the main comic. It's cartoony, does a great job of showing expressions, and the colours are very bright and vibrant, almost to the point where they seem light because there's a lack of darker colours. It's a good introduction story for a brand new villain, and I think both the story and the artwork did his character justice. The ongoing misadventures of Squat and Babu replaces the ongoing misadventures of Bulk and Skull that was in Year 1. It's the same sort of thing, just a few short comics that focus on very slapstick comedy with childish art, but rather than focusing on the bumbling guys from the good side for comic relief, they focused on the bumbling bad guys this time around. It didn't really do much for me, but I can see how reading 2 pages each month after reading the main comic would be enjoyable, so it's there for anyone who wants to read it, and I wonder whose misadventures I'll be reading about in the Shattered Grid hardcover. The rest of the comics that are in Year 2 are the stories from the 2016 and 2017 annuals, and it's exactly what you get in Lost Chronicles Volume 1. And since I've already reviewed that book, I won't go over everything again. Instead, I'll leave a link in the description or in a comment and pin it, because it's 12 stories with varying writers and artists and has enough variety to warrant a video of its own. But I'll say this about them, I really wish I'd read Year 2 first, because I love the oversized pages that show off the art, and the Finster story, which was my favourite, really does look amazing on the oversized pages because of the art style, and you can see more of it on the bigger pages. It's worth noting though that they only included one story from the first annual in Year 1, so they've made up for it by including the rest of the stories from the first annual, plus all the stories from the second annual here, and while I would have preferred them to have just included all of the first annual with Year 1, at least they've rectified it and given fans what they deserve. The afterword is by Bryce Coulson, the person in charge of the direction of Boom Studios as a whole, I think, and he mostly thanks the team, particularly the members who don't usually get a lot of thanks, like Ed the Letterer. I'm not sure Ed the Letterer did anything particularly difficult considering it's all done on computers, unlike the old days where if you made a mistake it just looked bad, but there's no reason he shouldn't get thanked. The best thing about the afterword though is the way he's ended it with the words "See you in Shattered Grid," which got me really excited to read it. The cover gallery in Year 2 is almost as amazing as it was in Year 1. It has every single cover and variant released in that 12-month span, including the covers and variants for the annuals. That means if issues 12 to 24 and the annual had a variant, it's in here, including the action figure incentive variants, the Morphin variants by Goni Montez, the Morpher covers by Miguel Mercado, and the Versus variants by Dan Mora. It also includes connecting covers by Steve Morris, which I had initially thought were triptychs, but looking at the cover gallery on Ranger Wiki, I can see it's not a triptych, it's 12 covers that form one giant image, and while it's too big to have a fold-out page, they have printed it as a whole image on the very last page, so we can see what it looks like in its entirety. My favourite covers this time around were the basic standard covers by Jamal Campbell, because he draws the characters just like Henry Prosetja, but due to the fact that it's cover art, he has more time to do each one, so the colours and lighting and smoke effects were absolutely amazing. Honestly, if they could make every panel inside the comic look like Campbell's covers, I would be ecstatic. The only downside is there are a lot fewer covers than in year 1, but that's not really an issue with year 2, there were just less variant covers printed for issues 12 to 24 for some reason. There's no behind the scenes section like there was in year 1, and I can only assume it's because most of the design work had already been done before year 1, so there was nothing new to add. The overall look and colour scheme of year 2 is also amazing. It lives up to year 1 in every single way, and I love when companies release books that are identical apart from the colour scheme and cover art. Everything lines up, from the title on the front cover, the credits on the back, the writing and the power coins on the spine, even to the inside with the page layout and presentation. Everything matches up with year 1, but with the Red Ranger theme instead of green. Having said that, something I didn't notice that Smurd P pointed out in his review of year 2 was the fact that there's one page where, even though it's red themed, they still use the dragon power coin in the background, and he's right. Since the book is Red Ranger themed, that should have been the Tyrannosaurus power coin, so hopefully they'll use the correct power coin on that page for Shattered Grid. Inside, there's lots of red on white which matches the cover, and if there's writing on a white page like the credits page, you'll see red and black writing on a stark white background, and somewhere there will be a zoomed in image of one of the comic covers with a red filter over it so no other colours come through. And when you think of it as a running theme throughout both books, it really does give you a sense of how much pride Boom have taken in the presentation. Just like year 1, when there's a new issue, they don't use just the cover for that issue, they use a zoomed in cover with a red filter and call it by its chapter number, and because it starts with chapter 13 instead of restarting at chapter 1, it makes it feel like it's a direct continuation of year 1 rather than a new arc, and that's good because that's exactly what it is. Also, just like year 1, year 2 doesn't come with a dust jacket, and this time I wasn't disappointed. I would still prefer both volumes to have shipped with dust jackets to prevent any damage to the book, because even just sitting there reading, you can actually rub some of the gold trim off very easily. But having said that, if year 2 had come with a dust jacket, it would do my nutting, since year 1 didn't, and they wouldn't match properly. So overall, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Year 2 Deluxe Edition is equally as amazing as Year 1, and that's saying something. Higgins seemed to go to great lengths not to write the story's Monster of the Week style in Year 1, choosing to focus on a deeper story instead, but in Year 2 he's done Monster of the Week style and used it to his advantage, creating a sense of fear for the Rangers by using sleeper agents, even though I still maintain they weren't that dangerous. Doing this meant there was still something going on when Lord Draken disappeared and Rita was in hiding, and it gave Finster a chance to shine, something he very rarely got to do in the show, but has done so 3 times now in the comics. The art was fantastic too, for the first half of the year at least, but I do have to say I found the art for the second half disappointing. The cover gallery was great, and the fact that Boom has seen fit to include both annuals says to me they care about giving fans quality and what they deserve, a rectification that shouldn't have had to have happened in the first place, but rather than hiding from it, they included it, and they have my respect for that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the blind box and show you some footage of it just so you know what it's about. I'm not going to open it though, sorry, but if the Year 1 hardcover is selling for £500 now, imagine how much a factory sealed blind box that has Year 2 inside it will go for in a few years. People pay crazy amounts for all the Power Rangers stuff, not just the comics, just look at the price of the Legacy swords, so I think it's a safe bet to assume its value will accrue. The Year 2 blind box is only slightly larger than the hardcover itself and only slightly deeper. They were limited to 500 units and mine is number 457 and it's still sealed. If you see someone selling number 457 on eBay or anywhere, message me and ask me if I'm selling mine, because if I'm not, then whoever's selling it is conning you. Just a friendly warning. So apart from having the Year 2 Deluxe Edition inside, it also has 3 random Mighty Morphin Power Rangers variants and 1 exclusive Mighty Morphin Power Rangers number 30 local comic shop day variant by Felipe Massafera, which is only available in the blind box, and I've seen those going for £50 on eBay. It's just crazy. I'm definitely looking forward to the Shattered Grid hardcover, and I'm super excited about it, not just because of the story, but also because of the book design. I had been wondering which Ranger it would be, and when I started writing this review, my money was on Draken's hybrid Dragonzord Tigerzord coin with the Draken cover and mixed white and green pages. But the very next day, Smurd P sent me a link to a page with the full cover art for Shattered Grid, and I have to say it looks kind of strange because there's this reddish purpley tinge over everything, and Draken doesn't have any red except on his visor. It doesn't show which power coin they'll use, but after seeing that, it has to be Draken's hybrid coin. Either way, I'm really looking forward to it. Just like Year 1, I absolutely 100% recommend the Year 2 Deluxe Edition to anyone who loves Power Rangers. If you're just a casual reader, then get the trade. But if you like me and were a fan from the beginning in the 90s, you'll definitely want the hardcovers, you won't be disappointed. It's impossible to find these at decent prices because within a few weeks they double in price. But if you can afford to pay that, or if you pre-order the next one, just like Year 1, the combination of the story, the art and all the extras, it's absolutely worth your money. And when you're done reading it, I promise you, you'll find yourself staring at the books sitting on your bookshelf because it's just that beautiful. And if you're lucky enough to own Year 1 and Year 2 together, you won't be able to draw your eyes away for a very, very long time.